Welcome to a brand new season of Scintillations, the podcast that explores what's now and what's next in consumers, culture, and the business of branding. This season, we'll be studying Swiftonomics. Join us as we talk to marketing experts, business leaders, and entrepreneurs about what makes Taylor Swift the best brand on the market. Listen in as we unravel the secrets behind her ability to capture hearts, minds, and market share, exploring what makes her a powerhouse of success. If you're a bona fide Swiftie, if you just don't get the hype, or you want to know what you can learn and apply in your own business, this season is for you. Now let's get started with your host, Erica First.
Hi, Melissa. Thank you so much for being here with me today.
Hi, Erica. Thanks for having me.
Why don't we get started with you telling us a little bit about you and what you do?
Yeah, so I'm a business development consultant for creative agencies. I got into this business because I worked in-house at creative agencies for about 13 years, with my longest standing role being a head of business development and growth. So I've been on the inside of my clients' businesses. I understand what it is to build a business, but I ultimately felt that, the agency model was broken and I wanted to help agencies build better business models that were sustainable and led them to do their most creative work. So that has kind of been the journey of me building a business and being a business development consultant today.
Awesome. Well, I'm sure you have your hands full. This is a big moment for agencies.
Yes, I mean, a lot is happening, but I'm very much, an advocate for the next generation of agencies, female founded agencies, which are currently less than 1% of ownership of creative agencies, but also women in general. I think this is a really important moment for women in business. And I focus on a niche of six-figure agencies and helping them get to seven figures very intentionally because only 2% women-owned businesses make it to seven figures. And when I learned that, it was such a shock for me. So, I'm working with the 1% and the 2% of women-owned creative agencies, and I really want to see them succeed and build better businesses. And I think the world will be better because of that. We'll have more women shaping conversations. We'll have more women in positions of influence, which will make the world a better place. So definitely it's the moment and I'm really happy to be part of it.
Awesome. Well, it's a perfect segue into our topic today, talking about Taylor Swift and mutually beneficial relationships, because we've been looking at all the different pillars in different episodes of some of the strategies that she uses to be such a solid brand. And relationships are very much at the core of the Taylor Swift brand in multiple ways. What role do you, in your opinion, do relationships play for Taylor Swift as a brand, as a business, and as a person?
Yeah. So, I mean, the reason I'm excited to talk about this is because for me, business development is relationships, and relationships are part of business development. And I think often people see business development as sales, and that's just one part of business development. That's one part of the journey, but relationships are the whole journey. I think Taylor puts relationships at the center of her brand and of her world, and not just relationships in terms of her relationships to her fans but relationships to her peers and, people you could potentially see as competitors, relationships to advocates and collaborators that go beyond her industry, and of course, relationships to her fans. But you can definitely see she is investing in building those relationships in all avenues, and that strengthens her brand. It strengthens her connections to those people. Creates loyalty with those different relationships, and clearly it has led to success. But those relationships have been built over such a long period of time. She really has, you know, a long game in mind, which again, I think is important and draws parallels to in business, the relationships you need to be looking to build. We don't to have a successful, sustainable business, it's not about short-term relationships that you get a quick hit from. It's really investing in the relationships that will take you far in business, be it with your customers, your peers, your advocates, your collaborators. So I see her like there's so many lessons to learn about the way she builds relationships and how she invests in those relationships in different ways.
And what are some of the lessons that you see?
I think she brings a thoughtfulness to her approach to building her brand and her business. This is something that, is really important to me in my business, but I feel is so underrated in business in general. We're just operating in this world of instant gratification and speed, and we're all going from one thing to the next thing and glossing over little details for the sake of getting things off our to-do list. But I think what she does so well is really put such attention to the little details, and whether it's her handwritten notes or an intimate video or cryptic messages she's leaving in her outfits, she's paying attention to all these details, and it shows such a care for her craft and what she's doing and the passion. She's not just doing this for the money. She clearly cares so much about what she's doing. So I think from a business perspective, that's something we can all lean into more. How can we show more care for our customers? How can we slow down and add little details that are really thoughtful, which could be as small as a comment on a social post or creating some kind of contest for our customers, but those things are really memorable. And I think we crave those special moments because there's such a lack, such a deficit in this world of speed and get it done and instant gratification and, on to the next thing. And I think if you can be a business or in your approach to marketing, build a brand that is about thoughtfulness and small details, you really stand out. And so I think she that's something she does really well. Also, in terms of relationships, she's really good at just listening and getting feedback from her fans, right? Like she's reading things, she's listening. She doesn't look at her relationships as a one-way conversation. She is looking at it as a partnership where, her fans are her muse, and she takes the feedback, she responds. She launched her 10-minute version of All Too Well because fans had been asking her about that for years. And that's not something that is common in the industry to have a 10-minute long song, but she did it for her fans. And so I think, again, with business, can we do a better job of listening to our customers and having them shape our business, and instead of pushing what we want onto them, responding to what they actually need, and how can we let them guide our decisions and be open to doing things that may not be common, but is something that your customer needs or wants. And there's so many other things she does, but I think those are two really great things we can learn from her in terms of business and how she strengthens the relationships she develops.
Yeah, and I talk a little bit about we have two episodes dedicated to both her watching and listening to the fans and also treating them as partners in her entire process. Now, outside of the relationship with the fans, which is actually very profoundly psychological, and I'll save that for another day. I'll save that for my wrap up speech because it's really about the person. Romantic relationships are also at the core of her brand because she's sort of the first person to say the things that you're not supposed to say, right? Boldly embrace, yeah, this is about a specific person. And yes, if you date me, I'm going to write a song about you. And at first people were trying to sort of castigate her, like, how dare you do that? And it's really become the brand. What do you think about that?
I think, own your story and own your experiences. And if that fuels your creativity, then I think that's great. I mean, I much of the content I develop for my business draws on experiences I have personally, and I learn from them, and they inspire me and inspire my clients on how, we can do things differently or better. And I think that, the reason people connect so much to her music is her stories are real. They're not made up. And even if she's embellishing or, for the sake of a song, changing some of the details, I think people, relate to her stories because they're things they've experienced. Like none of us are that special, that our experiences are all unique. We all share so many experiences. And so people are connecting to her through her song lyrics and potentially learning their own lessons, or it validates them in some way. So if any of your life experiences are leading to you being able to be more creative in whatever avenue is, your passion of creativity, then I say go for it. I think that is great. I think we have to use our experiences to fuel the stories we tell, or the craft that we put our energy into. And there's definitely hints as to who she's referring to, but she's never directly necessarily called out certain people and experiences in detail. I think those experiences just fuel her creative craft, in my opinion. What I do love is every experience for her, it's a lesson, and she turns that into a creative outlet.
What about, because she has such a wide range of people that she collaborates with, and there's obviously the ones that are core and have been around for a very long time, but then she'll pull in somebody who's totally random, would never have expected. What do you How do you think that benefits her brand by reaching out to people that might not necessarily fit into the Taylor Swift world?
Well, I think it broadens her reach and it allows people to connect with her that may not have thought they were a Taylor Swift kind of person. And I think it's really smart. And, if you translate that to business, collaborating with people outside your niche, or, I think there's always something to learn too. Like I think she very much does it to challenge herself and stretch herself, because it would be a lot easier to collaborate with the people that are more obviously within her kind of niche of music. So I think it stretches her creatively, but yeah, it welcomes different people into her brand. With her latest, album coming out, one of the first songs is a collaboration with Post Malone. That's pretty unexpected. And it will be interesting for fans of Post Malone. Will they be listening to that album to see him collaborating with her? So I think it's really smart, and bringing it back to marketers and business parallel. I think that's something you should be doing to stretch your brand in different ways and also welcome wider audiences into your brand outside your niche, and give them an opportunity to build a relationship with you in a way that maybe they wouldn't have been open to previously.
So let's say I'm a toothpaste brand, right? I've been using this as the example in every episode because I think toothpaste theoretically is probably a relatively uninteresting category. If I wanted to apply some of the rules of relationships and mutually beneficial relationships that Taylor has been using, what could I do?
As a toothpaste brand, well, I think, going back to the beginning of what she does and how she builds relationships. It's, establishing common ground, it's sharing stories that people can relate to, doing it as a toothpaste brand versus a personal brand. You're going to have a different approach. But I think welcoming people in and brand storytelling and allowing them to understand the story behind your brand and why you exist and why you're there in the world, I think gives people the opportunity to connect. And then going back to how she, listens and has that two-way conversation with her customers in the same way, the toothpaste brand kind of just being aware of how people are responding and where there might be gaps that they can fill or what they can do better. If you're not listening on social media as a brand, then you're doing things wrong. There's so much you can tap into just by reading comments and listening to what people are saying and seeing how you can respond better to strengthen your relationship with your customers. And then one of the first things we talked about, which is just being thoughtful. What are small little details that you can put into your brand that show people that you care? and that you're not just another toothpaste brand. What would matter to them? What are the thoughtful details that show your customers that you care? And, that again strengthens the relationship that you're building. So I think, it's going to be a little bit different in how you approach it as a brand versus a person, or if you're like the founder of a business. I think there's a lot more direct parallels versus a brand, but I think those principles can be applied to any kind of brand. I think it's all about relationships and really not seeing your customers as a sale and a number, but seeing them as people and a relationship you're nurturing through from before they come to you to while they're using your brand to after.
So, for some of the brands listening, let's make sure that we clarify the difference between a mutually beneficial relationship and the use of influencers and or celebrities in their advertising or in their campaigns. What are the differences between those two?
Well, I think using influencers to, show people how to use your brand is one marketing tactic, but it's not how you're building relationships. Relationships are multidimensional. You're building them whether you want to or not across every single touch point that you're interacting with your customers. So, say we're doing influencer marketing, so we're building mutual relationships. That's just one tactic. I think you should be building relationships through your influencer marketing and doing all the things we mentioned, having thoughtful details, listening to your customers through influencer marketing. But you should be doing that through every other tactic you're using too, and every interaction your customers having with your brand, especially the ones where you're not pushing something onto them. So when they're discovering your website or they're at the store and they're touching your product, what are the things you're doing? What is the experience you're creating for them? How are you creating a relationship with them in every interaction? It's not an ad or something that's being pushed on them, but the things that they're proactively discovering your brand in their own world that get overlooked in terms of those little details and what we're doing to build a relationship, which could be as small as like a texture on packaging or a small message or something they get when they open if they make a purchase. I think those are the little moments where you're building a relationship that really matters. Of course, when you're doing influencer marketing, you want to make sure that the person you're putting your brand in the hands of is taking as much care as you would in the other moments of your brand and being able to exemplify the values you have as a brand. But I think you have to look at the holistic, all the moments of the relationship you're building and how that works together and not just one avenue of great, we're building relationships because we're doing this one thing. It's all the interactions that your customers are having with your brand, especially when you're not pushing something onto them and they're kind of discovering it on their own.
Yeah, and I love that sentence that you said, which is you're building a relationship whether you mean to or not. That
Hmm.
even in the absence of
Yeah.
effort, there is still a relationship that's being built, just not necessarily the one you want.
Exactly. And if you're not being thoughtful and kind of taking control of relationship, they create the relationship that they want to have, which as a brand or a business is not something you want. You want to be able to build the relationship that you want with your customer. And, I think that's where you can have a lack of loyalty, you can have a lot of negativity around a brand because they're taking what they want from your brand instead of you kind of shaping that relationship with them.
And what happens? Let's say a brand steps in it, right? They do something that they shouldn't have, or they take a position that is unpopular publicly. How do you salvage the relationship at that point?
I mean, just owning up to what you did and why and the lesson you learned from it. I think, we all have human moments and brands can be human too because the people behind them are human. Everyone has a pretty attuned BS meter now. So trying to hide it or they'll forget about it is the complete wrong way to go about it. If you mess up, just say, hey, we messed up and this is why, and this is what we learned from it, and just make it a moment where, again, you're using it as an opportunity to strengthen your relationship with people because you're teaching them in the same way Taylor does. Like when she messes up or she has a lesson, she turns it into a moment, a defining moment for her and something that fuels her going forward. So I think in culture, we maybe are taught to have shame around our failures or to hide them or to gloss over them and pretend everything's okay. But what if we use them as defining moments for our business? Like, hey, this happened, we messed up, and then channel that to get you to a stronger place than you were before because, you had a normal moment that everyone has in life or in business. And I think that's really important. I think if you gloss over it, you're missing an opportunity to connect with people, to own up to what you did, and to also strengthen the relationship that you have with people that follow you, whether they're customers or just advocates or collaborators. It's something I coach businesses on every day, which is just really just paying attention. And we talked about all the themes of thoughtfulness but I think we overlook so much of the importance of relationship and the foundation it sets for any kind of partnership in business. And I think the bigger the business and the more successful you get, the harder that is to maintain. But never forget the relationships you have with your customers and the value and the power you have in that relationship in terms of showing them how much you care and that you're listening.
Yeah, and I think it's particularly acute, the idea of a mutually beneficial relationship. Because as we
Yeah.
said before, we can be in relationship even if it's bad. But the idea is that I know what I get out of you and I can rely on the
Yeah.
exchange that there is.
Yes.
You are hoping to obtain money from me and loyalty in the future. And here's what I need: consistency and delivery on promises, and the occasional, oh,
Yeah.
that's a nice thought. I didn't expect that sort of surprise and delight moment. But they have to be things that I consider surprise and delight. I sit in so many meetings where they're like, oh,
Yeah.
we had three, now we're going to add four. Do they need four? Is that going to put any added benefit? No, it just says, it's a new thing that we came up with that we can do, but it has like
Yeah.
no effect whatsoever.
Totally. Yes, absolutely. And also, I love what you said on, actually delivering what you say you're going to deliver when you say it. Like it's not always. I think we focus a lot on the surprise and delight and, that stuff. That's fine. But if you don't have the basics straight, if you're not doing what you say you'll do when you say you'll do it, those little things, that's where like trust is getting broken down from the beginning. That's where your relationship is falling apart. So, you can do the surprise and delight moments, but if you're not delivering when you say you're going to deliver, like those things don't even matter. So, yeah, I think it's really focusing on those like foundations and making sure your relationship and you're right, it is mutual. And that's why I think a lot of people struggle with sales because they're looking at it from a very egocentric, what's in it for me? I'm getting money. I need to close this deal. But what's in it for them? Like how are you helping them? And if we can switch the dynamic to think about sales as I'm doing a service for my customer and I'm helping them succeed, then you're going to do much better in business because if you're approaching it with a customer centric mindset, you'll find it's a lot easier to win them over.
Yes, and I would add to that, as long as we're talking about people reaching out with pointless communications, that respect, which I think that we have
Mm.
mentioned, like peppered in here and there in the conversation, but that the relationship needs to be treated with respect. I get a lot of people who like connect with me on LinkedIn, and not 3 seconds after I take the connection, they're in my inbox. I do this, when can we
Yes.
a call?
Totally. It's a respect for their time, their money, their energy. Yeah. Don't bombard me with what you're trying to sell before you even know me at all. And I think that shows up so simply in us asking for something from the other person. Like, stop asking what you can get from them. When can we book a call? I didn't even tell you I want to have a call with. I don't know who you are, where you're coming from. Frankly, you don't know me either, right? You can sometimes pick up on those things because they say what your business is, and that's not your business. You're like,
Yeah.
this was being pasted to 100 people. Respect is key, and I think having a respect for the relationship in general with your customer, and the fact that whether you're B2B or B2C, but a respect for their role in your business and a respect for their time, and I think is so important. And we disrespect that in so many little ways that we don't realize, in whether it's you have to call customer service and you're waiting for a half hour on the line. Like, you're showing disrespect. I don't care about you. I don't care about your time. Whether it's not responding to email for days, whether it's, being late for a call with a customer. These are all little things where we're showing disrespect. Every little interaction, you're building a relationship, and it's either the relationship where you want, or it's not. So you
Yeah.
have to be looking at every little detail.
Okay. So last question on the spot. Favorite Taylor Swift song?
Oh, favorite Taylor Swift song. I should have thought about this in advance. If I Were a Man is my current favorite Taylor Swift song. I'm training for a half marathon in April, and her music is good running fuel for me. But If I Were a Man is a good one for any woman out there.
Indeed. One of my favorites too. Well,
Love
thank you
it.
so much for being here with me today, Melissa.
Thank you so much for having me, Erica. What a fun conversation and a way to think about business. So thanks for the prompt.